it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it! Some people dream of success while you're going to wake up and work hard at it. Nothing is impossible. You should get to the point where anyone else would quit, and you're not going to stop there. No, what are you waiting for? Do it! Just do it! Yes, you can! Just do it! If you're tired of starting over, stop giving up.
I don't even know what I'm doing right now.
Oh, camera 1, camera 2. Live stream.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on BQLive. My name is Jerid Hill.
I'm Eric Deem.
And we wanted to say thanks to all of those who last week got to join our show. We actually had, since then, we had several hundred people watch the show. 10% of them were watching it live. So we're going to see those numbers increase
Absolutely.
as we go, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we're very happy with that for first show.
First showing,
I mean,
very minimal advertising.
Yeah.
So we do thank you for
Absolutely.
joining our show today. So last week we had a contest, right?
Yes.
And nobody won the contest.
No.
Now we were giving away.
I don't know how somebody didn't win because
somebody accidentally gave the answer.
Yeah.
Right.
We won't point any fingers
no.
at anybody.
We're not pointing fingers. We would never do something like that. So, but anyway, so last week nobody won, and that was 100 sheets of parchment paper. So we won't go back and rehash the actual contest. But this contest, you see my really awesome T-shirt here. So this T-shirt, we're going to say you're going to still, because nobody won the 100 sheets of parchment paper. We'll just continue that. We'll
Everybody can use parchment paper.
Right. So, but anyway, what we're looking for is the name and type of animal. That's all, right?
Yep. Should be pretty easy to figure out.
Yeah, so the name and type of animal for this character. So if you can put it in the comments of throughout the show, and we'll remind you later if nobody has answered. You'll win 100 sheets of parchment paper, and we'll just send it to you at no cost. Yeah. The other thing is just the question and answers. We will be doing Q&A at the end of the show. So we want to make sure that during the show, if you do have any questions, that you're going to go ahead and post those in the chat section. Yeah. So that way we can just prep you throughout the throughout the show. So near the end, we'll be able to answer any additional questions you might have. So today's today's topic is
defining your market in DTG. We get asked this a lot.
Right.
How do you sell your shirts? Who do you sell to? What direction do you go in? And there's several here we're going to talk about today. So
yeah, there are a lot of different markets, and the way I look at T-shirt printing as a whole, it could be DTG, it could be screen printing, it could be embroidery, dye sublimation, whatever it might be. Now, being in DTG ourselves, we want to try to help our customers and help potential customers and help other people in this market.
It's such a new market that people still haven't really figured out exactly how to utilize DTG as a tool for their business sometimes. So this should help them out.
So some of those markets, contract. Okay, so we'll just kind of mention some of them. Now these aren't all inclusive, so we're just going to mention a few. We have contract, we have fulfillment, we have wholesale, retail, and even something that we call more of a custom retail, right? So some of those markets, so let's just go to the first one. Okay. The first one being contract. How would you define contract?
Well, when I think about contract printing, I think of printing for another company's needs.
Okay.
So let's say you have a local screen printing shop that doesn't offer DTG. They're going to get people coming in wanting 10, 12 pieces. So you contact them and say, listen, I will do your print work for you on these small, full color, small orders pieces that you don't want to do. You just contracted that to me. You write me a check and then you sell it to your customers. And that customer wouldn't know that I was contracted to me per se.
Right.
Embroidery shops, all these people who have a customer base that could utilize DTG but haven't taken on the equipment yet, utilize them, and then vice versa. It's good to build those relationships even as a DTG shop to work with embroidery shops, work with screen printing shops, because there's a need for your services just as much as there is for you to have for their services. A customer comes to you and they want 10,000 pieces, one color. You don't want to have them leave your shop. You want to contract that through a screen printing shop that you're already working with. It makes it better. That way your customers don't ever leave your shop.
Okay. So contract then, now I used to print, you used to print. Now, one of the areas I did do was contract printing, all right? And now contract printing in DTG is a little more difficult.
Yeah.
Because the way contract works in general is I'm going to put a product out there or put a service out there, and the people that want this work, they're going to supply me with the t-shirts, right? So I don't have markup in there. And then I have to reduce my cost, overall printing cost. So once we get that cost down, then I'm making less margin as well. The inks and labor costs are more, as we discussed in the last show. They're going to be more than what something like a screen print would be, right? So all of a sudden, now we have even less margins to work with, because people are traditionally wanting to price base against their competition.
Yeah.
So if a screen printer is selling something for $6 and it costs you $6 to make it, you can't do that.
No.
So contract printing in DTG has always been very difficult, and anybody who attempts it, it's not that they're not successful at it, it just becomes very difficult because all those costs are very, very defined at higher levels than what people are used to.
Yeah.
So yeah, in contract, what happens whenever someone gives you 100 T-shirts and you run 6 of them?
Right.
Right? Now, the normal, I'd say from my experiences in this industry, in the T-shirt industry, the normal waste is 2%. Okay? In the sense of the allowance.
Right.
All right. So if someone orders 100 shirts, technically 2 out of those 100 you can waste. You still have to pay for them, but you waste and it's acceptable. 98 out of 100 shirts, right?
I would always, because it's inevitable for me, I'll get distracted, I'll load the wrong shirt on for the wrong job, something will happen like that. So I'd always order an extra of each size of each color.
Right.
And if I didn't need it, then it's on the shelf for the next customer.
But a lot of times if the customer's providing the
That's
garment,
different than But
Right,
I would
so-
request that. I would ask them,
Right.
but just
Exactly.
because of these, because of the limitations of what DTG has, and the fact that you're providing, I never allowed garments to be provided to me in a DTG world because of the fact of how the garments will vary your print quality so drastically. But if it's a worst case scenario and they're insistent on it, they have to understand that they have to provide an allowance for that waste, because there is, you drop a damper, you drop the shirt while it's wet, what are you gonna do? There's no recovery of that. So.
Yeah, so you do have to, at least if you're in a contractual, contract printing, so to speak.
Yeah.
If you're in that type of business, then yeah, you do have to inform the customers. Now, what contract really means, though, if you go back to the originality of contract printing, it's actually drawing up a contract. Right? And a lot of times people don't do that. So the contract says, well, I'm going to guarantee you X amount of work if I use you for this, right? So it's almost always an exclusive, right? Almost always an exclusive. Now we've deviated so far from that throughout the years that when people talk about contract printing, they don't really have contracts anymore.
No, it's just a term.
But it's still something that you should have in this type, because those are the little things. You've got to supply more shirts. If the shirt gets ruined, who's responsible for it? Right? So you've got to put that into a contract form, have it signed off on, notarized, the whole 9 yards, because quite honestly, those are the things that people are confused about when it gets to the end of the day and you're like, oh, you know what, I ruined 5 shirts, right? So a contract gives the ability to spell everything out very clearly ahead of time, right? So now if we were to do contract printing, we could do fulfillment, right? So that's kind of like a contract, right? So some of these are
Very
going
similar.
to cross over,
Yeah, we'll have a little bit of
right?
between the two.
So like if you're going to do a fulfillment, what would you consider as fulfillment?
I consider fulfillment to be those companies where, let's say, you are able to go onto their website, you build your own web store within their server, and they print and ship your shirts to your customers under your name. That's kind of a basic line of fulfillment for me, in my mind. It's kind of how I see it. They kind of handle it from start to finish for you. The only thing you're doing is just promoting your garments or your designs and getting people to that website or to wherever your avenue of purchase is, and then letting the company in the background actually handle everything from start to finish for you.
Right.
And you won't make as much margin usually, but
Well,
you're not touching any of the product.
See, now again, some of these cross over, and I think this is where some of the confusion is, because when you do contract printing, the customer is supplying the garment,
Right.
right? When you do fulfillment, you technically should be the one supplying the garment,
In theory, yes.
right?
Especially if it's a big fulfillment shop, they're going to be dealing with
Right,
different
and that's all
vendors
they
and everything.
offer. So
Right.
some of these online sites that you order on their website, they print it, they ship it, line ship it.
Right.
So it's under your label, your name, what have you.
Exactly.
I agree. I call that fulfillment. So, when we go to like fulfillment, you're probably more web-based than anything.
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
Right?
Yeah.
So on the marketing side, I guess what are some of the ideas on, Facebook, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Everybody uses Facebook now.
Well, I had a little bit of a fulfillment business. One of my businesses, before I actually went to a brick and mortar retail store, I'm a big car guy, so I hooked up with a bunch of the online forums for the car community, and allowed them to then create a shirt for their club. And then they would come onto my website, they'd fill out a big form of everything, upload their artwork, and when somebody would order a shirt through the website, I would get the order details and I would print and ship the shirt for them, and they would just get a piece of the sale. And it was all handled through PayPal and everything. And it worked out really well for a while. It was just getting people to understand that, you're not doing any of the legwork. I'm doing all the work for you. You're just making a piece of the pie, and it's a good percentage. I think most people are making $5 a shirt in profit off of my fulfillment services. And if you have 10,000 people you're selling shirts to, and you're not touching it, the only thing you're doing is just clicking. That's a lot of money to be made.
Right.
So
Yeah, and so, obviously the difference then, one of the largest differences between contract and fulfillment is, even though, on the fulfillment side, you're kind of like you're blind, right? Nobody knows who you are.
Right.
It's the end customer.
Right.
They're the ones whose face is on everything.
Right.
Now, they're using your services, but because of that, you have more control, and you get to say and dictate what you print on. DTG, some shirts are better than others.
Absolutely.
Right?
We've proven that.
Right. And so in the contract side, when customers want to provide their shirts to you, they're not always going to provide the right garment.
No.
Right. And so if you get a low quality garment, your print can only be so good.
Right.
Right. And so when the customer comes to you and says, "Hey, this looks like it's just terrible. Why can't I get a better print than this?" Well, it's probably because they're using the wrong kind of shirt.
You should educate your customers, though. I mean, really, there
Well,
are contract.
I would say on the contract side, and maybe not on the contract side. Yes,
Yeah.
I think you need to educate
Let
your
them
customers.
know. Look, it's going to look like A, but I can make it look like Z if you
Well,
want it.
and so some of those samples. So when you do contract work, so some of the shops, what you said, like screen printers, there could be
Embroidery shops, sign shops.
right? So yeah, you would take a low quality shirt, you would take a high quality shirt, you would print on both, and then present them.
Yeah.
Right, and you are educating. And again, those are the kind of information. That's the kind of information you can also put in the contract. That even what shirts you recommend.
Right.
And there's no guarantees outside of that.
Right.
Right.
And there are some contract companies who refuse to. This is what's on the menu. you choose what's on the menu, or you find another a contract company to deal with. You know, there's some companies out there who are just so stubborn on the brands they print on, or the types of inks they use, or the machines, whatever it could be. It doesn't matter if it's embroidery or sign shops, whatever. People have their, you know, their preferred vendors that they want to use, and they don't want to deviate from them. They've got systems in place. They have dialed it in to make it work that way and to get the types of results people want. And then you go in and you throw something out there that they're not used to,
Right.
and you're asking for trouble.
Right.
You know, I would definitely ask whoever you're utilizing for those services, you know, what do they recommend?
Right.
You know, and that's a good way for like contract companies to go and get those contracts. You know, fulfillment is to show, take a sample shirt to a major manufacturer, or a big screen printing shop in-house that has 20 color automatics or something like that, that's producing tens of thousands of shirts a day, and show them what you can do, you know,
Right.
and that's really a good way to sell it, you know.
Well, and I think also, so we're kind of focusing on the aspect of you being the owner of the printer,
Correct.
right? What if you're just getting into this market, right? So now you're not the owner of the printer, you're on the need. You know, you need the product.
And that's where
So-
fulfillment can come into play too.
Right. So if you haven't purchased a machine, you could actually approach these companies as well. So if you do the contract side, you know, again, you have to be very considerate of what type of garments and those type of things you're printing on. But oftentimes I find, you know, the people that want contract work, most of the time they have a company already in place.
Yeah.
Right, so they're going to have their own garment supply, you know, what have you. So, but if you're going to do a fulfillment, and let's just say, I don't look fulfillment more as like you as like somebody who's in the business. I look fulfillment more like you have designs that you
Right.
like.
I'm an artist.
You're an artist, right? Yeah, and so you want to print those designs, but you don't want to print them.
Right. I have a website or something
Right.
that I have all my designs listed on,
Right.
but I don't actually do the physical printing and shipping of them.
Right.
I then find a fulfillment company that I use. I want to get samples from that fulfillment company, see how well they print, their price, you know, that kind of stuff, and then hook up with them
Right.
and let them do the printing for me.
And in that regard, I would assume then that it's best to use a fulfillment company if you are in fact like an artist and, you know, someone like that. If you're in a business environment, a contract company could work as well. But again, you just have to, you know, I'd really recommend making sure that the person who needs that contract work is actually talking in depth to the printer to determine what are the best shirts to use and those kind of
Yeah.
things.
And so that's going to dictate who your market is. I mean, are you selling your shirts to a school? Are you trying to gain, you know, high fashion clients? And that's going to dictate also as to which contract printer, which fulfillment house you use,
Right.
based on what they offer and what garments they like to use. Because if you're not going to want to send a customer who wants to buy a $100 T-shirt, you know, something from a 30-cent bin rack, you know,
Right.
it's going to need to be a high quality, high fashion grade shirt, and make sure that your contract printer, your fulfillment house, is utilizing those brands that
Right.
you want. You know.
Yeah. Okay, just as a reminder, if anybody has any questions as we go, just put them in the chat section, and near the end of the show, we're going to go ahead and take any kind of questions you have and, you know, answer however we can. And also, if nobody's won the T-shirt contest, once again, this design, all I need is, never
we
mind.
have a
All right,
winner.
we actually do have a winner. We'll announce a little bit later. Nice name, I know who that is.
We know who he is, yeah.
Yeah, all right, but we'll announce that. So forget the T-shirt contest. We actually have a winner there. But again, just as a reminder for the Q&A, just go ahead and make sure you're getting any kind of questions that you have in.
Wonderful.
Now back to our discussion. So we have the two we just talked about. Now we have wholesale.
Wholesale.
All right.
Wholesale.
So again, some of these kind of cross over, but on the wholesale side, what would you think? What would you think of when you hear wholesale?
When I think wholesale, I think as somebody who's going to resell the printed garment. So let's say if I'm a wholesale print house, if I'm actually the one physically owning the printer and I'm doing wholesale printing, and you were a brand, you owned your own brand, you would come to me, I would tell you, here's what it's going to cost me to print your shirts for you. And then you are reselling them on a retail level or in a store or on your own website or whatever, physically yourself. I'm not printing, I'm not shipping anything, I'm not packaging anything per se, unless you wanted me to, but that's not really what we're doing. It's more of I'm offering you at a discount rate so you can make a profit off of it as well.
Sure.
That's the gist of it in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. So on the wholesale, it's more fashion. So,
Yeah, it's all for resale.
And we talked about last week where the pricing scheme
Yeah.
is like if you're the printer and you're the one actually doing the printing, then the pricing scheme would be what your costs are typically. And again, this is usually the way it works. What your costs are, double that. That's your wholesale price.
Yeah.
Then you double that, and that's your retail. Right. So, which again, that's where the wholesale retail. So we'll talk about retail in just a minute. But so on the wholesale side, I have this. I have a guy that I've talked to for years, and I used to print for him, right? And I was screen printed, but I also did the direct to garment side of things. And when I was printing for him, he had some really, really awesome designs, and he eventually ended up buying a direct to garment printer. But basically, when I was working with him, he ended up saying, "Oh, I'm going to sell this shirt for like $20 or something like that." I can't remember. It was quite a few years ago. And I said, "No, that shirt can sell for a whole lot more." And so he's like, "Well, how much you think?" I told him, I said, I bet you can get 35, 40 bucks out of that easily. And maybe even more. And so he had an idea, and his idea was, we talked about it. He was going to take the shirts, he was going to put them into one of his friends' business. It was a tattoo shop.
Okay, yeah.
And so I talked to him. I said, "Well, don't sell anything yet. Why don't you just set it out there and see what kind of price you can garner
Yeah, the
out of
perceived
this."
value, what people think it's worth.
Yeah, and it
Or
was
they'll
actually
pay.
surprised. It was quite a bit more
Yeah.
than what he has expected, and it was right around what I was kind of suggesting.
Mhm.
So, part of all of these things, you still have to get into the market somehow,
Yeah.
right? So there are some really cool ideas that you can do. Now I was wholesaling to him, right? Because his was a retail brand
Right.
that he created, and so one thing that he had done was he was able to push his product out, kind of try to define what that price would have been. So, but anyway, I know we have some questions being asked, but we will get to those questions. So just be aware of that near the end of the show. But anyway,
Back to wholesale real
Yeah.
quick. So when I had my shop, I had a customer that would come in often. He had his own brand, and he was just getting started at when I just opened up my retail store. And he didn't really have a whole lot going on. His designs were not too fancy or whatever. But we started printing shirts for him, and he's in my parking lot selling them to his customers for double what I was charging him. So this goes on for a few weeks. They'll comes back in, he wants to buy some shirts. And I sit him down. I'm like, "Listen, we got to work something out." So myself and him now, we've partnered up and own this retail. It's called Nate Red Clothing. Just in case, sorry, I got to give a little shout out to Nate
wow,
Red. But
that was a shameless plug right there.
But I mean,
was it NateRed.com?
Yes,
1D or 2D?
2Ds,
Oh,
REDD.
There you go. It's a shameless plug for. Yes.
But it worked. I mean,
It's all good.
it was funny because I'm selling to him, and I think I'm making all the money. I'm thinking everything's good. I'm doing all the work, and I'm watching him in the parking lot selling for twice. I'm selling to him for $20, $25, and he's selling for $40, $45, and having no problem at all.
Yeah.
So there's markets out there now that brand has finally kind of. It's a local, little small brand, but it's finally in local malls and everything now. So now the wholesale everything's changed again. Now,
Right.
no DTG. It's not one at a time. Now we're doing more bulk work and distributing them to local stores in the area. So it's a little bit different now, but it's you never know how business relationships can evolve and change. Just it worked out really well for us. So.
Well, I like the fact though that he was hustling in the parking lot.
Yeah, well, he's
Right. Well, I mean,
that's how he
that's
is.
part of part of the marketing scheme.
Yeah.
I mean, in an age of internet technology, and we're all connected, but yet we've forgotten how to do the face-to-face, door-to-door, and those are critical. I mean, those are absolutely critical in any business.
I mean, I was nice. I would even deliver shirts to his work, after hours because he would get them to me late or something like that, and the design would come late, and I would go the extra mile and be 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, meet him to deliver his shirts for him so he could deliver them the next day to customers and stuff, and that's how you build relationships. It's not about price. That's where the service comes into play. Because I wasn't the cheapest guy in town, even though I was one of the first DTG only shops in town. I was by far not the cheapest player in the city, and I refuse to be. My services stand above everybody else's, and that's one of the ways why.
Well, and I think also, got to go back to, the mentality that if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true. Now, if you build it in a way that you are doing promotions, affiliate marketing, whatever it might be, now you're actually laying groundwork for people to come in and actually, be able to share. And now all of a sudden, when you build it in that way, they will come a lot easier.
This is not McDonald's.
Right.
It's not where you just put the golden arches out front and everybody knows what you're doing. So.
Yeah. So now, we talked about the wholesale, and then on the retail end. So, some of the marketing, that had taken place was, we're going to put it in a tattoo parlor.
Yeah.
We're going to do, what you talked about. Now, another idea I had done when I was screen printing is I would actually make a 2 colors shirt design, right? And so my background of the design was always the same. The color would change, but it was always the same design. And then on the foreground, I would have text, right? Now, this is before the direct-to-garment had really come on the scene. So, one thing that, what I was doing was I was taking the design, I was printing on onesies. Right, so I got my first. Well, in screen printing is a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But
Jigging it up in DTG and trying to spray pre-treat on one.
Right.
Oh man.
No, well that's the thing. In this, there was a light pink onesie and a light blue.
Oh
onesie,
yeah, okay, yeah,
right?
that makes it easy.
And so I had the design on the background was either pink or blue, to match the onesie, and then the foreground was just black. And it was text, and it said, I got my first hug from Dr. So-and-so. Or back in the old day, it might have been I got my first spanking from.
You found a niche.
Right.
That needed something,
So what you do though, but it's a lot of work, because what I was doing is I was making screens, I was cleaning off the one screen, putting a new color on, and then, but I would take a price list and give it to the doctors, or and say, hey, this is what we can offer you. But with DTG, all of a sudden it made it a whole lot easier.
Oh yeah.
So now you don't have to pre-treat, you just do CMYK printing. And you can print whatever design you want on there and do those kind of things.
No setup.
So part of, even though, that is kind of retail, because it was more the designs I had come up with, but it was really wholesale, right?
Yeah.
It was retail to them,
Because you were
wholesale to me, but I wasn't building a brand name.
Right.
Right. So, like I said before, we talked about how a lot of these cross over.
Yeah.
Because, quite honestly, they will.
Yeah, because I kind of did the same thing before I had my shop. A buddy of mine, a really good friend of mine, his name's Bobby, we started a clothing line called Drift Mafia. And we would go to car shows and set up a booth and just peddle our shirts. And not really knowing what's going to sell, what size to sell. Back before DTG, I had to order and prep ahead of time as far as quantities. What I would do is I'd contact the event promoter to find out how many people they were expecting to have at that event. If they're going to have 10,000 people, I would normally hit around 10% of the crowd would buy a shirt from me, so I know I need to bring 1,000 shirts. But what designs are going to sell? What sizes are going to sell? And that was a big factor. That's what made me really think about DTG was now I don't need to worry about all this pre-printing. I can just have the 25 designs on a wall somewhere. You tell me which one you want, and I'll print it for you.
Right.
I'm sitting on blanks instead of I still have printed shirts from back in the day. This was 10, 15 years ago when we were doing this. And we still have printed shirts because, this particular design on a small never sold.
Never sold.
So now it's like a giveaway, and that's kind of like.
You say it's a giveaway, but it could still, be promotional.
Oh, sure,
right?
sure.
So even though it was tough,
Yeah.
because you're forking out all that money and inventory along with the work that you have to have done and so forth.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
Now, we're kind of getting near the end, so I just want to bring up one last. So we talked about retail, But one last area would be more what I think we would call like a custom retail. Right, because a retail purchase is you go to the counter and you make a purchase for your personal use. Right. That's essentially what retail is.
That's how I view it too.
But we were talking about retailing fashion. So when we start to talk about retailing, what you want to buy, personalized, then all of a sudden we do custom retail.
Right. That's where somebody comes into my shop with a picture of their high school football player, and they want to put on a T-shirt for this night's game.
Right.
That's what we're talking about with custom retail.
Right.
You never know what's coming through the door then.
Right. Well, and so in those cases, you could, if it's customized. I mean, you talk about that. I mean, I had a contact once who, he was a photographer, right? But he did all the photography for the local football games at the high schools and so forth. And it was not only local; it was regional. And so you could go out onto their website, you could order prints and so forth. So those are the kind of things that you can do custom retail to help generate more revenue.
Oh, sure.
If you go on site even and you find a good photographer, or you could do instant, because now it's all digital, right? They can take shots and they can put it right on your computer immediately. So you could always be able to increase revenue by going on site if your printer is portable.
Yeah, a lot of them are. They're getting better about being more portable now.
Right.
With inks being more stable. Really, a few years ago, people would ask me about that, and I'd tell them, no, absolutely don't try to do anything mobile. Now, you can get away with a lot more. And like I said, being a big car guy, going to car shows, there's nothing more exciting to a car guy about being able to have a picture of their car taken at the show and put on a shirt for them to walk around, their kids to wear around at the show, or their car club. Everybody in the club's wearing shirts that are all of their car and then the name of the club on it or something like that, and they eat it alive. You can't. I mean, as fast as you can sell them and print them. It's amazing. So.
Well, that's cool. Okay, so we're going to do some Q&A, but first we want to mention the winner of the T-shirt contest.
We finally have a winner.
And so that was Dalton Tyson.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So the answer is actually Claris, the dog cow. Moof. Right.
That's what.
So that's the sound Claris makes. Claris is a female.
No, you can explain.
But
where
it was
Claris
an
comes
Apple.
from.
Yeah, it was an Apple thing back in the day. It was actually a Claris font, and so it was actually a typeface, and this was actually one of the icons.
Kind of like
in the typeface.
Like a wingbat.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. And so basically, when they made it larger for Claris Works and the page, pagination in the Mac, they redrew it a little bit, and they couldn't tell if it was a dog or a cow. So say, well, now it's a dog cow. Its name is Claris, and the name sounds Moof. So anyway, good.
Awesome.
Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that. We'll get you out some stuff. I think I have your address on file, but in case I don't, just send it to. Send your email to BQLive@BelQuette.com with your address, and I'll make sure we get that out. All right, so we're going to take some questions now. And the first question is from Rick Portune. I'm assuming that's how you
I think
pronounce
that's
it.
right. I recognize his name too. He's around on the boards and stuff.
I know who he is too.
Yeah.
So, but putting faces to names and then actually trying to pronunciate them.
Yeah.
So anyway, it says, how much profit would you look to get for contract printing?
I think you should be keystoning everything, which keystoning means 100% markup.
Yeah.
And that's really.
Well, if you go back to last week's calculator, you can actually. One thing I didn't.
Is that still available, by the way? Can they still download that calculator?
Yeah. It's
Okay.
still available. So if you go
Be
to
sure to
our, just go back to the YouTube channel and go to our playlist. Go to BQ Live. Click on the second one. The first one's an intro. Click on the actual first BQ Live we did. There's a link in there to our calculator. But as Eric mentioned, marking it up 100%, it's not a bad idea. So these kind of things, these calculator will help determine some of your real costs that maybe people aren't putting in there. So if you just use it, again, it's not a wherewithal calculator, but it is pretty in depth. So I would just make sure you look at that. But yeah, I think 100% markup is definitely good.
Yeah, I agree. It's about the minimum you can really do. I mean,
but again, we go back to, well, how do you sell that?
Right.
right? Because people are in a world where everything's dirt cheap. That's where you go back and you show this is a crappy print. This is a great print.
It amazes
This is
me-
DTG. This is what it can do for you.
Right.
And these are our prices. And it'll actually sell.
Yeah, I mean, when people tell me how, oh, I can't get anybody to spend $15 on a T-shirt, but they'll go to Wendy's and go buy $10 for lunch, but they won't buy a one-of-a-kind T-shirt, then you're just not selling it correctly, because the market is there. I don't care. I mean, unless you're in a one-stoplight town and you don't have internet access and you're not watching our show anyways. But I mean, you really shouldn't have any issues with finding that market. It's hard sometimes, but if there's restaurants and car dealerships and people have expendable money, then they're going to spend that for a one-of-a-kind product. It shouldn't be that hard to do.
Okay, we got somebody, Ideal Mind 8. Says, do you recommend DTG for startups? She started as a hobby using cutter and inkjet transfer paper. All caps, nightmare.
Yeah. and really, I mean, depending on the cutter and the transfer, I mean, there are some plotters out there that are, man, they are a lot of headaches.
Well, so the question is DTG.
Yeah.
Do you recommend DTG for startup? It's going to depend.
It really depends. It really depends.
does.
Do you already have market? Do you already have customer base? Do you already have people you can sell to? Are you starting from scratch and you have nothing? It might be a little tough. You might want to use one of those fulfillment or contract printers
Absolutely.
to get the ball rolling, get your name built within your market, and then bring on the equipment. We don't want to ever put anybody into equipment if they're not 100% ready for it.
Right.
It's going to cause more problems than good. So.
And a lot of it has to do with the white ink.
Yeah,
Right? So
absolutely.
when you put white ink in the system and then you just let it sit and you don't use it, you're going to have problems. Now, a lot of the machines nowadays are addressing that issue
Oh, yeah.
more and more.
Next generation machines are getting much better.
As
at
it's
that.
continue, right. The next generation machines are getting better and better with it. You should be able to leave it alone for a long time and be okay, theoretically.
Yeah.
But again, at this state, it's better to have work for the product.
Yeah.
Now, we recommend, like when people are using our product, at least the Mod 1 at this stage, if you are new to the business, we usually tell them not to put white ink in your printer. Because you want fluid in the printer, so we have like a cleaning fluid, a flushing fluid, and we'll tell them to put that in the printer, but just use your CMYK only.
Mm-hmm.
Because the maintenance, it's not,
Minimal.
there's a little more leniency. You can
Absolutely.
kind of step away from the printer and not be concerned like you would with white ink.
Yeah, right now the worst thing you can possibly do to a DTG printer is not use it. These things want to be ran
That's
hard.
inkjet
Yeah,
technology.
they just don't
Right.
like sitting idle. The harder. I mean, we're not good at our printer. We're not. We don't treat that our demo printers.
Our
and
demo,
stuff.
yeah,
we are very
we
hard.
rough it up
but
on
we
it.
try to be, as hard as an average consumer might be, so we can understand what's going to happen to them and know how to rectify that if it happens. But you got to run them. You've got to run them. So if you don't have the business to keep that printer running, I'm not talking 100 shirts a day, but you need to do a few shirts a day every day consistently, or wait
Right.
until you have that business coming in.
Right.
You might not be making as much money, but it'll cost you a lot less than having a machine that's not working and having to go through the repairs than it is to make a little bit less every shirt by using a fulfillment company.
And I think, like you said, you can always use fulfillment shops.
Absolutely.
In the meantime.
There's no reason not to.
And we used to recommend that all the time. We
Oh,
used to
yeah.
tell people, hey, look, if you don't have the business, don't force it. Just grow it naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And if you work yourself into needing equipment,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to be good.
And that's what we always try to, when somebody's looking at our specific equipment, or if you're looking at somebody else's specific equipment, and you got your heart set on that particular machine, find a fulfillment shop that is using that machine so that ideally, anyways, when you come bring the machines on board in your own shop, your customers won't see a difference in the quality of the print. It should be the same as long as all the parameters are exactly the same. You just have a lot less issues that way.
Right. Okay.
Dalton's got another question for us.
Contract, retail, wholesale, or all of the above? Well, I'm assuming maybe you're asking if you should do one or all.
Or
I'm
what's the
assuming-
best?
Or
It
what's the
really
best.
just depends on what your plans are, what your business model is.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on how you're structured.
I've done almost all of it. I've done contract, retail, wholesale, and custom retail. And custom retail by far is the hardest because the people coming through the door don't know what they want. That you're educating every single customer on, well, why can't my 100 by 100 image work? Why can't I just text you a photo? Why can't, and they don't understand it. Well, what color blue shirt do I want? Do I want this color blue? Do I want this color blue? Do I want a medium? Do I want a large? Do I want women's cut? Do I want men's cut? And you can spend hours with a customer for one shirt.
Right.
You know, so as long as you have that built in place and you're pricing accordingly, it's not a problem. But if you're just wanting that simple, quick jobs that come in, retail, custom retail might not be the way to go. And it's just a matter of what do you want to do, and that's how the market you need to attack.
Well, and I had, you know, whenever I was printing, you know, direct to garment and screen printing, you know, I mixed. You know, I did contract work, I did wholesale, you know, I did retail. I mean, I did all of the above. Now, on the contract side, I would go to all my competition in the screen printing field, and none of them had direct to garment equipment. And so I just said, hey, my name is Jerid Hill, and my company is such and such, and I want to work with you. I don't want to work against you. I want to work with you. Here's my price list. And I handed it to him, and honestly, even though I was making smaller margins, I printed more contract in my specific area than anything else.
I did the exact same thing.
In the direct-to-garment realm.
As soon as I got my direct-to-garment printer, I went around to every major, I mean, not mall and Paul's, more of, you know, had you know, a couple automatics. I didn't go to a 4-color single or a manual shop, but and let them know, listen, I'm in town. There's nobody else in town that can do these. Where I took my sample shirt, my card, information. Some of them sent me work, some of them didn't. Some is funny because some screen printing shops are very apprehensive about DTG, and they're threatened by it. And when they find out that you're in town, they won't let anybody know you're in town because they'll feel like you're going to steal some of their work from them. They want to push people into those 24 minimums and not fulfill those onesie twosie orders here, and they'll just tell clients straight out that it's not possible. So you got to find those partnerships. Different shops are going to be others, you know.
All right.
Uh-oh.
Ideal Mind 8 Genesis versus F2000 for startups. Well, we are absolutely biased in this.
Genesis for life.
We're going to say Genesis every single time.
You know, they're both good. I mean, the F2000 is good for startups in some regards. I like how easy it is to use. Man, when we sold it, we put a lot of people in F2000s because it does fit some models. It's just too expensive to operate. You can't fix it yourself. I mean, I don't want to badmouth Epson, but it's just there's a lot of negatives associated with that printer that offset all the positives. You know.
Yeah, and it's a good printer.
It is.
Honestly,
Print quality's good.
I think the biggest factor is just, you know, ink pricing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
serviceability.
It's a good printer. It does a good quality. All the above. It's just, you know, we've been at this a long time.
Yeah.
And,
Longer than Epson.
And Epson coming out of the gate, they did a good printer for their first printer.
Sure.
But they're new to the industry, and so again, you know, neither of us want to, you know, discredit or disparage, you know, that product. I mean,
I really like it. It's a good printer.
But we're going to be biased because
Absolutely.
we build the Genesis, and what the Genesis is a culmination of all that we've learned throughout the years, all the way dating back to, you know, early 2000 to now. And so we're just kind of looking at, you know, what does the industry need and how can we address that?
It's the Genesis compared to the F2000 is night and day. I mean, they are completely different levels of machines. To me, I like using the analogy of a flip phone to an iPhone 6, and it's that dramatic. And even though the F2000 is still a modern second generation type of machine as far as the white ink management and some of the things that it can do, it still does not have nearly the capabilities and control that the Genesis has. Nothing does.
And actually, none do.
Nothing.
Right.
Is
So
even
we
close.
could actually have this conversation and say it's the Genesis versus this versus this versus this versus this, because, and again, we're biased, absolutely, but we come from a viewpoint of where the industry is going, where it needs to go, and how we got there.
Well,
we're getting there.
We have both fought the battles of 10 years ago to now type of thing. We've been there for a long time to understand what's been needed. And a lot of these manufacturers, Epson, for example, you know, Brother, whoever, if they're not in DTG, they don't understand the actual necessities of needed. What we need to see move forward with the industry.
Well, one of the next questions, yeah, that one right there, says Genesis has addressed the white ink issue, correct? And so, since we're talking about the Genesis a little bit, yes, the idea behind the ink was to evacuate the ink from the head when not in use.
A lot of machines right now, they circulate the ink, okay, but the problem is not the ink that's in the lines, it's the ink that gets down in the head that coagulates and then thickens and then clogs the print head. So The Genesis, we've actually been able to pull that ink through the head, recirculate it to keep that so it doesn't happen anymore. And then also with the flushing.
And at this stage, at this stage, unless things change, it's a closed ink circulation.
Correct.
I believe, in the sense of the word closed loop, it's the only one on the market that I'm aware of. And that means it circulates throughout the entire system back into
the
the original bag.
Right.
Right? So it's actually going through dampers, it's going through the head, it's going through everything.
All the lines, everything.
So that, now again, this is unless we see that there's no need for that, we're gonna continue forth with that. But currently, that's kind of what our take is on it. So yeah, we've addressed it, but if it sets for a certain period of time unused, it'll flush out itself. Only at the head level, though. It's not flushing out in the ink lines, the dampers. Now again, all this information is all being done through beta right now.
Right. And we're going to do a show
once
detail.
so we'll do a show here before too long on the progress and everything. So I don't want to prematurely say a lot of this without having final real numbers from the beta side.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's kind of where we're.
Oh yeah,
at.
we have a lot of features we're going to be addressing and showing that's going to really raise a lot of eyebrows in the industry once we can. We're just one step at a time. All right, last question from Stephanie Anderson. My biggest problem is people want custom, but they don't want to even pay I think it's mediocre of what modicum of what they would easily pay in a retail store. Well, Stephanie, that's a tough one to deal with, because a lot of people don't value your services for what they really are. And if there's sometimes you have to fire customers. You don't want to, but sometimes the customer's not always right.
Well, I'll say, if your product, Stephanie, is a good product, and you have good quality, and your business, you're running it ethically and all the above, you'd be surprised at what you can do. And I'll just end it with a story of back when I was doing a lot of design work. I was charging at that time $75 an hour for my design work, right? And so after I was looking over everything, I had one customer in particular. Man, he gave me a lot of work all the time. And he was a very good repeat customer. Now, as I continued to work with him and I started looking at all my numbers, even $75 an hour for my company, because of my structure, it really wasn't enough.
Right.
And I knew I had to increase the amount that I was charging, so I was going to charge $125 an hour for my design work. Now, I had just got through working on a project, a very big project for this customer, and I think I was 25 hours in, something like that. And so when he came in and I sat down and I talked to him and I said, hey, I have to charge more for my hourly rate than what I was, but since we never discussed that, I'm going to charge you what we already agreed on, and my next price is going to be $125 an hour. And he says, why don't you just charge me now? I said, well, because we never discussed that. He says, why are you underselling yourself?
Right.
This is my customer. $50 an hour more times how many hours?
Yeah.
And he knows he's going to pay more. But he valued me as a business owner and partnering with him in the projects we've worked with in the past, that he was all willing and able to pay more. So a lot of times the way you represent your company, your product, you're trying to gain the right customer. And as Eric said, you could be, you sometimes you just have to fire your customers.
Absolutely.
And customer isn't always right, even though they are always right,
Yeah.
right? So we want to make sure that, what we do, as business owners is ethical business, and we're going to continue to produce high quality, and people are going to want to come back,
Yeah,
right? And they will pay that higher premium.
I mean, if that wasn't the case, nobody would buy a Mercedes-Benz.
Right. So we could continue on, but we're going to cut it off now. But just as a reminder, because of this special shirt, if you go to our web store, BelQuette.com/store, and anything in the cart or anything there, you can actually enter MOOF with an exclamation point in the coupon code and get 10% off of anything. It expires 1 week from today.
And as we mentioned last time, that even includes Mod 1s.
And Mod 1s and Edge equipment, yeah. So anything in there, you can just put MOOF in to use it. Again, once you put everything in your shopping cart, you just click on View Cart up in the upper right-hand corner, and that's where you would apply the coupon.
And
if you go through the
for the week?
checkout, it won't show up. It's good for a
Till-
week.
till the
And
next
next
show?
week, we'll have another show. We're actually going to the trade show.
Yep. NBM.
NBM Indianapolis.
Indianapolis,
We're
my
going to be
hometown.
booth 1121.
Yep.
And so next week we'll probably talk a little bit about if there's anything new.
Yeah.
We got some other things to talk about, but we'll probably recap a little bit on the show itself. But yeah, if you can make it out, come to
Awesome,
booth
yeah.
1121. We'd love to talk to you face to face.
Definitely.
If you have any questions or you have anything else that we couldn't address today, just shoot us an email. Again, it's BQLive@BelQuette.com, and we'll be sure to answer whatever we can, whenever we can.
Sounds good.
So if we don't see you in Indy, we'll see you next week. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.